Hello, Immortal Today family, and welcome back to our channel. In the last 24 hours, we have received the somber news of the passing of extraordinary talents, and today's episode is dedicated to honoring their memory. Before we start, we kindly ask for your support. If this video or the legacies of these remarkable individuals have touched your life, please consider giving this video a thumbs up. As a sign of respect and remembrance, thank you. News 1. A beat that never dies. A tribute to Ray Mayhew. The pulse of a band lives in its rhythm. It's in the heartbeat of every track, the thunder behind the melody, and the energy that moves crowds. For pop will eat itself, that pulse had a name: Ray Mayhew. Today we remember Ray not just as the drummer of a cult favorite band, but as a force in alternative music whose influence echoed far beyond the stage. With every strike of his sticks, he carved out a sound that helped define an era of boundary-pushing creativity. Ray was not just a drummer. He was the architect of adrenaline, a maestro of momentum, and a relentless innovator in a scene that thrived on rebellion. Emerging in the late 1980s, Pop Will Eat Itself, PWEI, was never meant for the mainstream. That was the point. They were loud, fearless, and unafraid to challenge conventions with a fusion of rock, punk, hip-hop, and electronic elements. It was chaotic and brilliant, and Ray Mayhew was at the heart of it all. Keeping time in a world that wanted to move faster than anyone thought possible. Ray's drumming was more than rhythm. It was statement and soul. His patterns were often complex but never overindulgent. He knew when to pull back and when to let loose. In songs like DEFCON 1 or Can You Dig It, you could feel his presence in every pounding snare and crashing cymbal, a mix of urgency, anger, joy, and rebellion. To the fans who grew up in the glow of PWEI's gritty optimism, Ray was more than a musician. He was a symbol of a different way of being, raw, honest, and free. The band's music was the soundtrack to adolescence, activism, late-night road trips, and underground clubs. Ray's drumming was the language of those moments. His sound lived in the bodies of people jumping in crowds, fists raised, voices shouting lyrics they felt more than understood. But Ray wasn't just defined by his music. Off stage, he was known as someone generous with his time and open-hearted with his fans. He embodied the spirit of community that pulsed through the alternative music scene. He understood that music could create belonging, and he never took that for granted. As the years passed and Pop Will Eat Itself evolved, disbanded and reunited in various forms, Ray's legacy remained intact. He was part of the band's most pivotal, electrifying years, when their sound was taking shape and challenging everything around it. Even long after stepping away from the spotlight, his contributions continued to inspire younger drummers and music lovers who discovered PWEI through old records, rare live recordings, or passionate word of mouth. Losing Ray is a loss that ripples outward to his family, his bandmates, his friends, and his countless fans. But in the silence he leaves behind, we still hear the echoes. The live recordings, the grainy YouTube footage, the battered CDs and vinyls. They all carry the memory of a man who gave everything to his craft. Ray Mayhew played like he meant it, every single time. And that kind of passion doesn't die. It becomes legacy. It becomes legend. In the end, music is memory. And memory is what we hold on to when words fail. Today we remember Ray with gratitude for the beats, the energy, the attitude, and the unrelenting spirit. He may be gone, but his rhythm will never fade. Rest in power, Ray Mayhew. You kept time for us, and now we'll keep time for you. News 2. Steel and Spirit, a tribute to Leroy Jordan. In the rich tapestry of NFL history, certain names are spoken with a kind of reverence reserved for true Legends players who didn't just play the game, but shaped it. One such name is Leroy Jordan. A cornerstone of the Dallas Cowboys defense during the 1960s and 70s, Leroy Jordan wasn't the loudest man on the field, but he never needed to be. His game spoke volumes. Fierce, intelligent, and fearless, he brought a quiet fire to every snap, every tackle, and every moment he wore the star on his helmet. Born in Excel, Alabama, and hardened by the grit of Southern football, Leroy rose through the ranks with one thing that never changed: heart. He became a standout at the University of Alabama under legendary coach Bear Bryant, a relationship that helped forge his relentless discipline and unshakable will. But when he arrived in Dallas in 1963 as a first-round draft pick, few could have predicted just how deeply he would embed himself into the fabric of Cowboys history. At just 6 feet and 220 pounds, he was often considered undersized for a linebacker. But what he lacked in stature, he more than made up for in instinct, speed, and pure determination. Opposing teams learned quickly: underestimate Leroy Jordan at your peril. He was the brain and the backbone of the Cowboys' doomsday defense, a unit that helped take the franchise to new heights. His leadership on the field was matched by his consistency, starting 154 consecutive games and finishing his career with over 1,200 tackles, 32 career interceptions, and 18 fumble recoveries. Numbers that only scratched the surface of his impact. But Leroy wasn't just a statistical marvel. He was a tone setter, a leader, a man teammates looked to when games got tight and tempers ran high. He carried himself with a rugged grace, embodying everything fans loved about football: toughness, loyalty, and a relentless will to win. One of the most iconic moments of his career came in a 1973 game against the Cincinnati Bengals, when he intercepted 3 passes in 5 minutes, a feat as wild as it is unforgettable. He didn't just rise to the occasion, he defined it. Off the field, Leroy Jordan remained humble, generous, and deeply respected. He wasn't one for flash or spectacle. He didn't chase fame. He simply did his job day in, day out, season after season. And when he retired in 1976, he left the Cowboys not just as a team captain, but as a legend whose number and name would be revered for generations. In 1989, Leroy was inducted into the Dallas Cowboys Ring of Honor, a fitting tribute for a man who gave everything to the team, the game, and the fans. That blue star on the helmet was more than a symbol. It was a family crest, and Leroy wore it with honor. Today, as we remember him, we do so with a heavy heart, but also with deep gratitude. Gratitude for the bone-crunching tackles, the smart reads, the sideline-to-sideline sprints. Gratitude for the leadership and humility. Gratitude for the way he made football more than just a sport. It became a lesson in character. Leroy Jordan was the kind of player every coach dreams of, and every fan is lucky to watch. A warrior in pads, a leader in spirit, and a cowboy to his core. Rest easy, Leroy. The stadium may grow quiet, but your roar will live on. News 3. The Reporter's Reporter. A tribute to Mark Knoller. In a world of fleeting headlines and shifting narratives, Mark Knoller was a constant, a steadfast voice of clarity, accuracy, and integrity in the heart of American politics. Today, we remember and honor a journalist whose legacy is etched not just in news archives but in the trust of a nation that counted on him to get the story right. For decades, Mark Knoller stood watch over the White House, not as a partisan voice, not as a personality seeking the spotlight, but as a tireless observer committed to truth. He didn't chase viral moments or dramatic showdowns. Instead, he gave us something rarer: the facts, unembellished and consistent. In an age of noise, he was a voice of reason. In an industry of egos, he was humility personified. Joining CBS News in the 1980s, Knoller began covering the presidency during the Gerald Ford administration and went on to report on every president through Donald Trump. His career spanned more than 4 decades, and with each passing year, his reputation only grew stronger. Reporters, White House officials, and even presidents knew Mark Knoller was always watching, always recording, always asking fair questions. He was famously meticulous. His personal database of presidential activity, flights taken, press conferences held, foreign trips made, was unmatched. At times, it felt like Mark knew more about the presidency than the presidents themselves. Journalists and researchers alike turned to him for reliable data, and he provided it generously, never asking for credit. His Twitter account became a must-follow for those wanting to cut through spin. A tweet from Knoller wasn't just an update, it was a timestamp in history. His voice was calm, authoritative, and devoid of opinion. In a digital landscape increasingly dominated by commentary and outrage, he remained a beacon of journalistic principle. And he did it all with grace. Mark wasn't flashy. He didn't seek to become the story. He wore his professionalism like a well-worn suit, quietly, consistently, with dignity. In the White House briefing room, he commanded respect without raising his voice. When he asked a question, everyone listened because everyone knew it mattered. When CBS News quietly ended his formal role in 2020, the outpouring from across the political spectrum was immediate and emotional. Reporters, politicians, staffers, and citizens spoke out in his defense not out of sentimentality, but because they recognized what we were losing. A rare kind of journalist, the kind who built trust not through charisma, but through character. Mark Knoller never needed to be flashy. His work spoke for itself. His legacy is not just the interviews conducted or the stories filed, but the example he set. He reminded us that journalism at its best is about service to the truth, to the people, to the historical record. To those who knew him personally, Mark was more than a journalist. He was kind, generous with his time, and deeply committed to mentoring younger reporters. He didn't gatekeep knowledge, he shared it. He wanted the press corps to succeed not because it was his job, but because he believed in the press as a pillar of democracy. Today, as we reflect on his life, we do so with deep appreciation for a man who gave his all to the story and never made it about himself. His career reminds us that credibility is earned slowly, through consistency and care. And once it's earned, it becomes legacy. Mark Knoller was, and will always be, the reporter's reporter. In his work, he chronicled history. In his character, he made it. Rest well, Mark. Your notebook may be closed, but your impact will continue to be written in the pages of history you so faithfully recorded. News 4. Uncovering the Hidden Figures. A tribute to Margaret W. Rossiter. In the quiet corners of libraries and archives, where dusty records and forgotten footnotes often reside, Margaret W. Rossiter found a revolution. She didn't shout. She didn't seek the spotlight. Instead, she rewrote the story, not with fiction, but with truth long buried. Today, we honor the life and legacy of a scholar whose work redefined how we understand science and the people behind it. Margaret W. Rossiter was not just a historian of science. She was a trailblazer, a truth-teller, and a champion for generations of women whose brilliance had too often gone unrecognized. Her groundbreaking work gave voice to those erased from the official narrative. She asked the questions others ignored. Where were the women in science? Why were they missing from the textbooks, the awards, the halls of fame? And most importantly, what did it mean for society when their contributions were overlooked? With razor-sharp intellect and unyielding dedication, Rossiter began the monumental task of setting the record straight. Her seminal book, Women Scientists in America, Struggles and Strategies to 1940, published in 1982, shattered long-standing myths about the absence of women in scientific fields. She proved methodically, unflinchingly, that they had always been there, working in labs, classrooms, and research institutions, often without pay, credit, or support. Rossiter didn't just tell their stories, she documented them, with the kind of rigorous scholarship that forced the academic world to take notice. Her research revealed the systemic obstacles women faced in science-limited funding, outright discrimination, tokenism, and the incredible ingenuity with which they navigated these barriers. But perhaps her greatest contribution was giving this phenomenon a name: the Matilda effect. Coined to describe the pattern of women scientists' work being attributed to their male colleagues, the Matilda effect became a landmark concept in both the history of science and gender studies. It provided a vocabulary for injustice, and, more importantly, a path toward visibility. Margaret Rossiter was awarded numerous accolades during her career, including a MacArthur Genius Fellowship, and served as editor of ISIS, the leading journal in the history of science. Yet through all her achievements, she remained grounded, driven not by prestige but by purpose. Her work was never about personal legacy. It was about truth, about fairness, about making sure future generations would no longer have to ask, where were the women? Because they'd be right there, in the history books, where they always belonged. To the students she mentored, Rossiter was generous and exacting. She expected intellectual rigor, but she also offered kindness and guidance to those walking the paths she had cleared. For many young scholars, especially women, she was more than a role model. She was a reason to believe that scholarship could be both powerful and just. Today, as we reflect on her passing, we remember not just what she uncovered, but what she restored. She gave voice to the voiceless, names to the nameless, and recognition to the forgotten. She reminded us that history is not fixed, it is made, remade, and, when needed, corrected. In an age where visibility and representation matter more than ever, Margaret W. Rossiter's work stands as a beacon. She showed us that the truth matters, that who we choose to remember matters, that every story, no matter how small, has a place in the grand mosaic of human achievement. Margaret didn't just write history, she changed it. Rest in power, Dr. Rossiter. The world is wiser because you were here, and future generations of scientists, historians, and truth seekers will carry your work forward, one uncovered name at a time. News 5. Across Borders and Screens, a tribute to Arthur Brauss. In a world where film is often bound by language and location, Arthur Brauss stood as a testament to the power of performance that transcends borders. Today, we remember a man whose presence on screen was unmistakable, a German actor who brought grit, gravitas, and humanity to international cinema for more than half a century. Born in Augsburg, Germany, Arthur Brauss came of age in a post-war world still finding its footing. But from a young age, he found his calling not in silence or rebuilding, but in storytelling, becoming a student of drama, language, and the human condition. His journey to the screen was not fast or flashy, but it was steady, built on the kind of quiet resilience that would define his roles. Though widely recognized in his home country for appearances in television staples like Tatort, Derek, and Der Alte, it was his international work that brought him to wider acclaim. Most notably, Brauss played pivotal roles in some of the most politically and emotionally charged films of the 20th century, films that didn't just entertain, but confronted audiences with truth. One of his most celebrated performances came in Sam Peckinpah's 1977 war film, Cross of Iron, where he portrayed Private Zoll. In a movie that peeled back the glory and glamour from warfare to reveal its human cost, Brauss held his own among a cast of global stars. His performance was understated yet unforgettable, a portrayal of vulnerability wrapped in the armor of duty, and a reminder that even in war, humanity flickers behind every uniform. Throughout his career, Arthur Brauss often played men hardened by life soldiers, detectives, criminals, but there was always something deeper beneath the surface, a sense of fatigue, introspection, or unexpected tenderness. He had that rare ability to make even the toughest characters feel real, not villains or heroes, but people shaped by circumstance, caught between what they wanted and what life demanded. He wasn't a star in the Hollywood sense, and he didn't need to be. His impact wasn't measured in red carpets or blockbuster hits, but in moments, a stare held a second too long, a quiet line delivered with devastating weight, a gesture that said more than pages of dialogue ever could. For fellow actors and directors, Brauss was a collaborator of the highest order, disciplined, prepared, and endlessly professional. He believed in the craft, not the ego. For audiences, he was a familiar yet mysterious figure, a face you might not know by name, but never forgot once seen. In many ways, Arthur Brauss was a bridge between German cinema and the world, between post-war trauma and artistic expression. between realism and empathy. He proved that acting could be both a mirror and a message, and that film, even in its darkest moments, could be a path to understanding. Though he has now taken his final bow, his work remains. In film archives, in digital libraries, in the hearts of those who felt seen through his performances. He leaves behind a body of work that spans genres, countries, and generations. A quiet, powerful legacy built role by role, scene by scene. Today we say goodbye to Arthur Brauss not just as an actor, but as a storyteller who helped shape the emotional language of international cinema. His face may no longer light up the screen, but his impact still lingers in the shadows he gave depth to, and in the silences he filled with meaning. Arthur Brauss, thank you for showing us that powerful art doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stands still, looks us in the eye, and tells the truth. Rest in peace. Your stories will keep speaking. News 6. A Quiet Light, a tribute to Antitoros. Some people change the world in loud, sweeping gestures. Others do it quietly, steadily through acts of care, dedication, and vision that ripple outward far beyond what they ever intended. Antitoros was one of those people. Today, we remember and honor a life marked not by celebrity, but by substance, a life of meaningful contributions that touched many, even if not always in the spotlight. Though her name may not have graced headlines, her impact was deeply felt by the communities she served, the people she uplifted, and the causes she championed. Born into a world that didn't always make room for quiet power, Anta carved her own space through compassion, commitment, and quiet resilience. Whether her work unfolded in education, activism, the arts, humanitarian efforts, or community leadership, she poured herself into it fully, never seeking recognition but always delivering results. Those who knew her speak of a woman with extraordinary integrity, someone who listened more than she spoke, who understood that real change begins with empathy. Her contributions were rarely about personal gain. Instead, they were about building something better, a fairer world, a more compassionate community, a future where more people could thrive. Anta believed in the strength of connection. She worked to bring people together, across differences in culture, language, and belief, and was often the bridge between those who struggled and those who could help. In a divided world, she believed in unity. In a noisy world, she practiced attentiveness. In a world obsessed with recognition, she remained grounded in purpose. What made Antitoros truly special wasn't just what she did, it was how she made others feel. She had a way of seeing people, truly seeing them, even when the rest of the world looked away. For many, her support was a turning point. Her mentorship gave strength. Her encouragement sparked action. Her quiet belief in others became the catalyst for change. While the details of her life may not be widely known, her legacy lives on in the lives she touched. In the student who found their path because she cared. In the neighbor who felt less alone because she reached out. In the organization that thrived because she quietly stood behind it, doing the hard work that no one else wanted to do. To honor Antitoros is to honor the power of the unsung hero, the person who doesn't ask to be remembered but deserves to be. In a world that often equates influence with fame, she reminds us that true legacy is measured not in visibility, but in impact. Her passing leaves a silence that feels larger than words can express. But in that silence, we hear the echoes of her presence in the projects still running, the lives still changed, and the love still felt. Anta taught us that a life of meaning is not measured by applause, but by the steady beat of compassion lived out day by day. So today, we light a candle not just for mourning, but for gratitude. For the example Anta set. For the work she did. For the grace she gave. And for the reminder that the quiet ones often change the world the most. Thank you, Antitoros. The world is better because you were in it. And though you are gone, your kindness, strength, and legacy will live on in the people you believed in, and in the future you helped build. Rest in peace, you mattered. You still do. News 7. Telling the stories that mattered, a tribute to Carol Saline. Few writers capture the soul of a city. Fewer still capture the hearts of its people. Carol Saline did both, with elegance, insight, and an unwavering belief in the power of storytelling. Today, we say goodbye to a woman who didn't just report the news, she revealed the humanity within it. For decades, Carol Saline was a defining voice in American journalism, best known for her long-standing work with Philadelphia Magazine, where her feature stories were sharp, compassionate, and deeply personal. Whether she was writing about complex social issues, profiling local heroes, or exploring family and health, Carol brought empathy to every paragraph and a fearless honesty to every subject. She was, at her core, a truth seeker, not in a sensational way, but in a human way. Her words peeled back the layers of a story, until what was left wasn't just fact, but understanding. She didn't just ask, "What happened?" She asked, "Why does this matter? And who is affected?" It's what made her writing unforgettable. Over the years, Carol built a body of work that was as versatile as it was impactful. She tackled subjects others avoided, from domestic abuse to medical injustice, always with a reporter's tenacity and a humanist's heart. She brought voice to the voiceless and dignity to the misunderstood. Her journalism was never about chasing headlines. It was about telling stories that mattered. And her talents didn't stop at the newsroom. Carol was also a best-selling author, most notably co-authoring the beloved Sisters series of photo essay books with photographer Sharon Wolmuth. These books, filled with images and stories of real women, celebrated the bonds of sisterhood, friendship, and connection. They struck a chord with readers across the world, becoming bestsellers not just because they were beautiful, but because they were real. That was Carol's gift, finding the universal in the personal. Whether she was writing about public figures or everyday people, she knew how to uncover the thread that connected us all. Her words were bridges between strangers, between generations, between city and citizen. She was also a passionate advocate for women's health, mental health, and social justice. Her voice extended beyond the page through speaking engagements, panels, and community work. In all she did, Carol made it clear: words have power, and that power should be used for good. Those lucky enough to know her personally describe a woman of warmth, wit, and tremendous intelligence. She was a mentor to young writers, a generous colleague, and a tireless professional. Her curiosity never dulled. Her standards never slipped. Her heart never closed. Carol Saline wrote with purpose and lived with grace. In losing her, the Philadelphia journalism community loses one of its brightest lights. But more than that, we all lose a storyteller who helped us see ourselves and each other more clearly. Yet her legacy endures. In every article that challenges us to think deeper, in every book that comforts a grieving sister, in every young writer who dares to write with courage and heart. Carol showed us what journalism could be, not just informative, but transformative. Today, as we mourn her passing, we also celebrate her voice, a voice that brought light to difficult places, and that will echo far beyond the final column or chapter. Thank you, Carol, for telling the stories no one else did, for reminding us that everyone has one worth telling, and for always, always writing with heart. You may have laid down your pen, but your words and your impact live on. Rest in peace.